I'm Hailey, 28, female, and my life took an unexpected twist 4 years ago when my stepsister Emma destroyed my life by framing me and successfully got me out of the family will. To give you some background, my parents split when I was very little. Their divorce was messy because my mom cheated on my dad with his best friend, Paul. It was like a huge betrayal that shook our family and hurt all of us. I was just a kid when they decided to split and go their separate ways. As I got older, I could see that what happened between them left deep scars on my dad's heart. It was tough for him, and he never really got over the pain of my mom betraying him. He didn't talk about it much, but you could tell it was a sore spot. The way he looked and acted when her name was brought up spoke volumes about the hurt he felt. The memories of their failed marriage shaped my dad's attitude, not just towards my mom, but in how he dealt with relationships in general. You can probably understand now why I became so protective of my dad while growing up. When I began to grasp what my mother had done without understanding the full story, anger fueled my emotions, and I pointed the blame squarely at my mom for tearing our family apart. I wasn't proud of the fact that my parents were divorced, hence every time I saw my mom with Paul, my resentment kept growing. The final blow came when one day she dropped the bomb that she was going to marry Paul. She continued to happily tell me how much in love they were, and she was excited for me to be the flower girl at the wedding. But all I felt was a boiling rage inside me, as I didn't want my mom to marry Paul. Imagine being a teenager wrestling with your parents' divorce and then learning your mom is marrying his best friend, being just 13 years old. I started rebelling like any other teenager, dealing with this messed up family situation. The frustration and anger spilled over into my school life, where I started bunking classes and hanging out with the wrong crowd, which eventually landed me in trouble. I was a complete mess, and my attempt at rebellion only added more chaos. I knew my dad would be hurt when he found out about the news too, and I couldn't bear to see him in more pain. It reached a point where my mom, seeing how things were unraveling for me, decided to take me to our family therapist, Sarah, to sort out the mess. I initially hated the idea of going to a therapist, but I had no idea how these therapy sessions would eventually change my life forever. As days turned into weeks, I slowly started to open up to Sarah about how I felt about my mom. Seeing my resentment, Sarah decided to invite my mom to join me in therapy as well, so we could work on the issue together. This is where my mom started to open up to me about why she had actually cheated on my dad. You see, I had known for as long as I could remember that my dad struggled with drinking problems. But what I didn't realize was that his drinking wasn't just a harmless habit. It apparently turned him into someone unrecognizable. When my parents were married, my dad would come home every night drunk, out of his wits, and let out all his work stress on my mom, either verbally or physically. Even though he would profusely apologize the next day after he was sober, the marks on my mom's face and body told a very different story. It continued to happen every night and slowly kept getting worse and worse. As you can imagine, the toll on my mom's physical and mental health was devastating. She had no parents to turn to for help, and my dad's family refused to interfere. In a desperate attempt to save what was left of our family, she tried to get my dad help for his drinking problem. Sadly, he stubbornly rejected any support, opting to drown himself in the bottle every evening. His behavior became a daily ordeal, a routine, and it only slowed down when my mom found out that she was pregnant with me. While my dad was overjoyed with the news, my mom was terrified at the prospect of bringing a child into this tumultuous environment. Faced with the harsh reality that my dad was unwilling to change, she was desperate for someone to lend a helping ear to her problems. This is where Paul, my dad's best friend, came into the picture. She started to share her struggles with him, not hoping for him to fix things, but just seeking someone who would understand her. Paul was taken aback by what my dad was subjecting her to, though he had suspected something due to my dad's violent temperament mixed with his drinking habits. My mom and Paul gradually became friends, and over time, it seemed they fell in love. After I was born, my mom and Paul made the tough decision to run away together. This is how my dad discovered that his best friend was involved with his wife. He tried to beg my mom to come back to him, but she refused. My mom told him how she had attempted multiple times over the years to make him understand that his drinking problem terrified her, but he stubbornly refused to accept his mistakes and change. She remained steadfast in her decision and eventually filed for divorce. As I grew older, I only knew his side of the story and that my mom had cheated on him with his best friend and took it as the truth. My mom, out of love for me, shielded me from the harsh realities of their past. She made a deliberate choice never to discuss what my dad had put her through, aiming to preserve my innocence. It was her way of keeping me away from the painful truth hidden behind closed doors. A truth that I was able to only unravel thanks to our therapy sessions. At first, when I learned of this, I was naturally skeptical about what my mom revealed. However, when she presented me with pictures and evidence she had collected over the years of their relationship, I was left speechless. Learning this truth shattered the image I had of my family. I questioned why she never filed charges or raised these issues during the divorce. She explained that she desired nothing from my dad. She just wanted him out of her life. She had found her happiness with Paul and didn't want to punish my dad further. The only reason she permitted my dad to continue seeing me while growing up was because she didn't want me to grow up without my father. Despite the pain my dad had caused her, my mom made it very clear to me that he had never hurt me in any way. I knew this to be true, as my dad had always been supportive and loving to me. My mom didn't want me to harbor any anger towards him. She also acknowledged her own mistake in falling in love with his best friend, which had hurt him deeply. After learning the truth about my mom's struggles, my relationship with her began to heal, and the anger that once consumed me started to fade away. I found myself gaining a deeper understanding of her choice to leave my dad with each passing day. When my mom finally found the courage to share her wedding plans with Paul to my dad, it hit him hard. I stood by him, offering comfort as he grappled with the news. Dad decided to take a brave step by seeking therapy, putting in the effort to change and become a better person. After months of counseling, he seemed to grasp the mistakes he had made and extended a sincere apology to my mom. Quitting drinking entirely, he endeavored to rebuild not only himself but also foster a healthier connection with my mom and Paul. I chose never to reveal to my dad that my mom had confided in me the true story behind their divorce, as I didn't want to burden him with additional guilt and remorse. Through the years, I have been a supportive force for my dad, urging him to get back into dating so he can find himself a partner. That is how he crossed paths with Talia, his current wife, and my stepmom. Talia, who was married before, has a daughter named Lisa. At first, Lisa and I used to get along well despite our 2-year age gap. However, our relationship started to wane when I slowly discovered her knack for manipulation. She proved to be a master of deceit, effortlessly turning any situation to her advantage, whether it was lying to our parents to avoid punishments or deceiving complete strangers without a second thought. Lisa's manipulative skills knew no bounds. I can write countless stories of how Lisa manipulated everyone around her without everyone being the wiser. To give you an example, One day, when I was visiting my dad, I wore a lapel pin that my grandfather had gifted to me before he passed away. I was very proud of it and cherished my family heirloom. Lisa, intrigued by its beauty, started to insist that she could borrow it for her upcoming graduation. My eyes widened in shock and I refused. Lisa started to restart in tears, insisting that she and I were sisters, so I should learn to share things with her. Talia tried to mediate, urging me to let Lisa borrow it for one day and promising that nothing would happen to my ring. However, I stood firm in my decision and my dad supported me as he understood my emotional attachment to the lapel pin. That night, as I slept at my dad's place, Lisa took advantage of the situation and stole my lapel pin. The next day, panic ensued when the pin couldn't be found. My dad, Talia, and I turned the house upside down to find it. To my shock, the lapel pin was discovered buried in the backyard. From the corner of my eyes, I saw Lisa smiling at me slyly, and this absolutely enraged me. When I voiced my suspicion to my dad that Lisa was behind it, he dismissed the accusation, attributing the incident to the dog. My dad told me that we could not blame Lisa without evidence. This incident marked the beginning of my realization that Lisa's manipulation extended beyond mere words, seeping into her actions and influencing those around her. I stopped talking to her altogether after this and avoided her whenever I visited my dad. As we grew up and eventually went to college, I saw Lisa even less and less. I had secured a full-ride scholarship for college and relished my college days making new friends, exploring different classes, and savoring the freedom of youth. One Christmas break, while I was back at my mom's place, my dad invited me over for dinner, insisting that he had something important to discuss. He gave me a heads up that Lisa would be joining us as well, and I reluctantly accepted his invitation. At dinner, my dad informed us that he was updating his will, making provisions for the family estate, and wanted to include Lisa. He explained that I, as his daughter, would inherit 80% of the estate, with the remaining 20% designated for Lisa. The room fell silent, and I sensed Lisa's discontent. She immediately questioned why she was receiving less. Dad clarified that he had discussed this with Talia and Lisa's biological father before making this decision. At this point, Talia clarified that she and Lisa's father would be leaving all their estate and investments to Lisa, ensuring her financial security. Because my mom's financial situation wasn't that good and I wasn't Paul's biological kid, my dad wanted me to have 80% of his estates for my own stability. Lisa wore a displeased expression throughout, clearly upset with the discussion. The rest of the dinner was rather quiet, and I decided to keep to myself, avoiding any confrontation. After the meal, we went our separate ways, and the topic wasn't brought up again. Back in college one day, I was busy working on my assignments when I received a link from my dad with the message, "How could you do this to me?" I was confused and opened the link to see that someone had impersonated me, used one of my pictures as their profile photo, and posted a disturbing post on my dad's Facebook wall. In the post, this person had gone on to describe how my dad used to abuse my mom and was a terrible human being. The post even included details of their marriage that were absolutely shocking and completely untrue. The post ended with the person who was pretending to be me writing how I wished my dad would be dead, so I could finally live off his estates. I called my dad immediately, but as soon as he picked up, he started yelling at me. He couldn't understand why I'd post such horrible things without talking to him first. I desperately tried to explain that it wasn't my account and that I would never say those things. However, he pointed out that the profile picture matched mine, making it hard for him to believe otherwise. His phone was ringing off the hook with calls from friends, relatives, and colleagues who'd seen the post. Some were genuinely shocked, buying into the false story. I urged him to report the post and guided him through the steps to remove it from his wall. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. The post had been shared by others who tagged my dad. Some actually believed the false accusations and started accusing him of being a wife beater. The news spread, reaching my mom, who was shocked. When she called me, I broke down in tears, explaining that it wasn't me. Thankfully, she believed me. However, the fallout with my dad was intense. He refused to talk to me no matter how much I tried. He insisted that I had shamed him by bringing something from his past which was now affecting his present. In the days following the incident, I learned from my mom that he decided to drop me from his will. Despite her pleas for reconsideration, he insisted that if I could tarnish his reputation to such an extent, then I wasn't entitled to his money. Although I didn't care about the money, I was disappointed that my dad didn't believe me. While grappling with the repercussions of my fallout with my dad, Lisa sent me a smiling emoji out of nowhere. I was confused and sent her a question mark, to which she replied that she was finally successful in taking everything from me. My eyes widened in shock as I realized that it was in fact Lisa who had been behind the post. You see, back when Lisa and I were close, I, as a naive child, had confided in her the real reason for my parents' divorce. I realized quickly that she had used this information, adding more additional lies to orchestrate my removal from my dad's will. I was beyond enraged and tried to get in touch with my dad several times, trying to reveal the truth. But as usual, he didn't believe me with just the one text from Lisa and accused me of trying to avoid responsibility. I kept begging him to see the truth, but gave up when I saw he was adamant. I could understand how hurt he was and decided to give him his space, hoping that one day he would realize that it wasn't me. I could have tried reaching out to Talia regarding this, but I knew, like my dad, she would never believe me over her own daughter without any further evidence. Over the last 4 years, my dad and I have lost all contact despite my mom's multiple attempts to reconcile. This also led to conflicts between my parents, as my mom believed me while my dad didn't. My stepsister's deceitful actions had not only severed my relationship with my dad, but also deprived me of a spot in the family will. Despite these challenges, I graduated from college and currently work as a software engineer. I did miss my dad every day and wished things were different, but through therapy I have come to realize that this wasn't something I could control, so I had made peace with it. Fast forward to last month, and karma seemed to have finally caught up with Lisa. In a surprising turn of events, Lisa was arrested for card fraud. She had cunningly signed for a replacement card, posing as her mother, Talia. Exploiting this card, she engaged in extravagant online shopping sprees and travel, depleting thousands of dollars from Talia's account. As the money disappeared, Talia became suspicious and contacted the bank. To their surprise, the bank revealed that Talia had requested a replacement card a few months earlier due to an alleged theft. The bank, upon tracing the card, promptly alerted the police, leading to Lisa's swift arrest. As Talia and my dad rushed to the station, they were shocked to discover that Lisa was the perpetrator. As the truth behind Lisa's schemes unraveled, she couldn't come up with any excuses for stealing money from her own mother. My dad must have quickly realized that if she was capable enough to do this, she was capable enough to do worse, so he refused to bail her out until she told him every other malicious thing she had ever done. Driven by fear of facing prison time, Lisa finally confessed to creating a fake Facebook account in my name and posting that malicious content 4 years ago. My dad was shocked, to say the least. My mom, informed by my dad of the shocking truth, reached out to me to offer solace. She assured me that everything would be okay, and my dad finally acknowledged his mistakes and saw the truth. Since then, my dad has been reaching out, desperately seeking my forgiveness, while part of me is relieved that he now believes me, a moment I had been waiting for a long time, I can't help but feel a pang of sadness as well. It's disheartening that he was so swift to dismiss me from his life based on a post I wasn't even responsible for. My mom has been encouraging me to forgive him and making me feel guilty for not responding to his attempts at reconciliation. AITA, if I don't immediately forgive my dad and let him work for my forgiveness harder, as he was the one who had dropped me from his life and his will 4 years ago. Update 1. Following advice from everyone, I invited my mom to fly out to me so we could have a heart-to-heart conversation about these events. It has been 6 months since I last saw my mom, mainly due to my busy work schedule. This trip was much needed for both of us. During our time together, I eventually opened up to my mother about how her insistence on forgiving my father was starting to bother me. I explained the hurt I felt when my dad yelled at me and refused to believe that Lisa was behind the Facebook post. I recounted several incidents from my childhood where Lisa displayed her capabilities as a deceitful liar. Yet my dad consistently refused to see the truth. I expressed my gratitude for my mom's unwavering support and her willingness to believe me, especially in the face of my father abandoning me. Yet, I made it clear that I needed to let him back into my life on my own terms. The pain of losing him had been profound, and it took a long time for me to come to terms with the abandonment. Over the last 4 years, I've been working on myself, operating under the assumption that my dad might never learn the truth. Now that he has, the sudden barrage of calls and messages from him feels overwhelming. My mother broke down hearing me talk about how much I had kept all these things inside. As we cried into each other's arms, she apologized for pushing me and promising me that she wouldn't be doing that anymore. She also informed me that she would ask my father to back off a little and give me space. I'm thankful for the support and love my mom has shown towards me during her visit. We have been exploring museums, attending art shows, and I even took her to see my office building. Seeing the proud smile on her face fills me with immense happiness. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I have been bombarded with multiple DMs requesting me for an update. Not much has changed other than that my dad has reduced the calls and texts now. Instead, he sends a weekly email to me sharing his week and reminiscing about my childhood. He talks about his favorite memories with me. Reading them always makes me sad, as it then makes me wonder how he could let a misunderstanding strain our relationship. Through his emails, I have also learned that Lisa is undergoing mandatory counseling. Talia decided not to press charges after Lisa promised to change. I'm skeptical considering her past, but I hope, for my dad's family's sake, that she genuinely transforms. I have been sharing my feelings with my therapist, gradually accepting that my dad might be sincerely regretting his actions. While my therapist encourages forgiveness, I am determined not to forget the past and have stronger boundaries with him this time, ensuring he won't repeat this hurtful behavior. As the new year approaches, I have decided to fly back to my mom's place. During this visit, I'm considering reaching out to my dad. We will see how things unfold and whether we can find a way to rebuild our relationship. Update 3. I met up with my dad. As I had mentioned earlier, I decided it was time to confront my dad about everything that had transpired 4 years ago. I invited him out to coffee as I wanted to have a conversation with him one-on-one. When the day arrived, we met at a local cafe. The air tense with unresolved emotions. My anxiety was at its peak as I saw him in person after so long. My dad warmly hugged me, but I remained stoic. As we sat down, my dad looked at me with a mix of regret and longing. He started apologizing, his words laced with sincerity. He acknowledged the pain he caused by not believing me and cutting me out of his life. Opening up, he shared how the fallout from the post had hit him hard. Friends, relatives, and co-workers pointed fingers, tarnishing his reputation. He was deeply disappointed and ashamed of how he had behaved with my mom and wished he could have changed that. He thought he had paid his penance when he found out that my mom had cheated on him. He shared that when I was born, he felt the responsibility to be a better man for me, and he worked tirelessly to make that happen. However, when the post surfaced, it shook him to the core, making him doubt how I genuinely felt about him. He had no clue that I was aware of what transpired between him and Mom. His greater disappointment stemmed from the fact that I hadn't directly discussed it with him, but chose to post it on social media instead. Coming from a different generation, he wasn't aware that people could falsely impersonate others online. The post's detailed information led him to believe it was genuinely from me, leaving him feeling completely blindsided. At this point, I interjected, revealing that my mom had confided about their past to me during our therapy sessions. However, I chose not to confront him earlier, not wanting to dig up the painful past. Unfortunately, I shared this information with Lisa, who manipulatively used it against me. My dad nodded in understanding, a mix of regret and remorse coloring his expression. Watching him express remorse, tears welled up in my eyes, realizing the weight of his admission. In our discussion, my dad also revealed that upon discovering Lisa's deceit, he promptly updated his will. Surprisingly, he decided to bequeath the entire estate to me. While I hadn't given much thought to his will, the act itself felt like a meaningful validation. It signified that my dad finally believed me, and Lisa couldn't manipulate him anymore. He continued to beg me for forgiveness, promising that he would never again let anyone come between us. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. I decided to put the past behind us and hugged him, taking a tentative step towards rebuilding what was once a shattered relationship. Since our talk, my dad has been consistently expressing deep regret and actively working to mend our strained relationship. My dad is overjoyed about the reconciliation, frequently extending dinner invitations that my dad graciously accepts. Talia, Lisa's mom, has reached out to me, offering a sincere apology for her daughter's actions. Despite the past, I don't harbor any ill feelings towards Talia, as she, too, fell victim to Lisa's manipulative behavior. The path to forgiveness is a complex one, and while I am willing to rebuild our relationship, I am determined not to forget the lessons learned and ensure healthier boundaries moving forward. We are all slowly finding our way back to a more peaceful family dynamic. It's a work in progress, but I am hopeful for the future. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.